Good morning, friends. Today I want to talk about education systems. So, I'm raised in the Nordics. That's where education is very relaxing. Crazy dogs. Good morning. Yeah, that's where education is very relaxing. It's very sort of focus on, I guess, creativity and not being too stressful. Just sort of producing, I guess, well-rounded individuals. And I think every school system has its share of what you call rote learning, where you have to just memorize things. It's always part of any education system. But I think they try to minimize that and teach understanding, critical thinking, and I don't know what you call it, like thinking around problem solving, self-directed learning, things like that are somewhat emphasized now. And I think the Anglosphere countries, they also do this to some degree. I'm less familiar with the education system there. But I think in general it's okay. But I think education is something that doesn't get the funding and I guess attention that it deserves. And I think the PISA results, which is, if you're not familiar with PISA, it's I don't know what kind of, it's some kind of organization. I don't know what's behind them, but they do this report, I think every 4 years or something like that, where they review the world's education systems, and they try to do it in like a unbiased, systematic way. And I think the last one came out in 2022 or 3, I don't remember, but basically it showed kind of decline across the board. It's very hot today, so I'm gonna turn around so I don't have to walk all the way up the hill. Anyway, yeah, they do this review of all the world's education systems, and they show there's been pretty sharp decline. Well, I think since COVID there's been sharp decline, but even before COVID there was already kind of steady decline, you could say. I think it started around 2010. And you could see this in like most wealthy countries. I think almost every country had a decline of some sort, but in education, this is like academic results basically. And it started around 2010. And I think the reason is just smartphones. Across the street here. Smartphones is the main culprit. I think there are other socioeconomic factors as well that I don't want to get into. It's not the point of this video. That might be another video. I have some thoughts on that as well. But I think the decline was visible everywhere. But what's noticeable is that the wealthy Asian countries of Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, Taiwan, they produce the best academic results across the board. South Korea as well. I don't remember the exact rankings, but it's clear that I think Hong Kong and Singapore are like at the top. Hong Kong is where I am, so that's why I'm talking about this. And the difference between, I guess, what I'm used to, and like the Nordics, they do okay overall. I think Iceland does the worst. This is a bit too dank. Iceland does the worst. Iceland has its own problems. They got rid of standardized testing, which was a massive mistake. I think they're bringing it back now. So, but you had some like pretty delusional people in charge of education over there who don't like pragmatism and reality and common sense. So the education system there has overall done a lot worse than the other Nordics, but in sort of general, the Nordics do okay. I mean, Finland was famously the #1 education system in the world. It has since then lost that spot, but they do okay. The Hong Kong and the other sort of wealthy Asian countries, they top the charts every year, especially in the STEM subjects. But overall, they just do really well. But I think the thing I wanted to talk about, sorry, I'm rambling a bit, did not sleep very much last night, is the difference in the systems here. So Hong Kong, Singapore, these countries, they focus a lot more on rote learning than, I'm generalizing here, but they focus a lot more on rote learning than at least like a lot of the Western countries do. So it's more memorization. And I've just been thinking for like my own family, like what kind of schooling do I want my kids to get, and am I okay with this sort of rote learning system where you just have to memorize everything, everything is drilled into you, and what happens here, I think this is more in like Japan and Korea, is that there's a lot of pressure on you to get good enough grades to get into the university, or even get into the right universities. You could say that the education system is almost like a little bit of a caste system in a weird way. Again, separate topic, don't want to get into that. But there's a lot of pressure on kids to do well academically. And, you know, some of that is, like, some pressure is good, but, like, there's a balance there, right? There needs to be a balance. Too much is bad. Just produces a miserable human being. But what happens is that they go to the school and then they take after school classes where they are basically taught how to pass the exams. And it's a bit like optimizing for a KPI, where you forget why you're optimizing for the KPI and you just end up spending all your energy on optimizing for the KPI. And that, in this case, the KPI is academic results. But you kind of forget, like, why are we doing this? And I think, you know, this is a theme in these videos. A lot of this will always boil down to, like, what are we doing here? Like, what's the point of all of this? But in this case, it's, yeah, you get better academic results, but what are you giving up for those results? And there are other newer systems out there, like Montessori is one of them. I don't really know much about it, but the literature says there is a small improvement, I think, in outcomes, but it could just be self-selection bias, so I'm really not sure. But that's maybe, again, another topic. But I think in general, like, what I'm thinking about is difference between, I guess, the sort of like Western, more self-directed, creativity-based education systems, and the ones you see in Asia that are producing much better results. I think, you know, there's pros and cons to each of these. I don't think one is inherently better than the other. I think personally, if I had to pick, I would pick something that produces a more, like, well-rounded individual and doesn't cause all that stress. So I think there's downsides to both. You could argue that the one in the West is a bit too relaxing as well. Neither is perfect, both have flaws. But I think the conclusion that I reached with this is that this matters until, well, like age 16, whenever kids go to university. It depends on the country. And after university, obviously everything is kind of the same. Like, you go to university, they all work against the same system, depending on which university you go to. That's where your education system stops mattering. And I think most of what, like, modern society was built on an education system was actually closer to the one we have here in Asia. It's more rote learning. That was the model in the West until, I don't know why it changed, probably 70s, 80s, 90s, something like that. But, like, historically, most of the sort of Western schooling system was based around rote learning. So really, my conclusion is that it's not really that important, as long as as long as you have a kid that bothers, like you make them learn, you make them pay some attention. Hello, Fankawa. Fankan. Hi, Fankan. That's our cleaning lady. Yeah, so as long as you have a kid that pays attention and kind of does okay academically, I think that is what's important. Having like a happy individual. I think balance is the thing that matters. I think the education system isn't. I think people focus a lot on this, but the actual system itself isn't that important. One thing I wanted to mention before signing off is interesting thing about the system here is that even though you have more inequality, that it produces more equitable outcomes. So socioeconomic status in Western countries is actually a stronger indicator of, like, it's more correlated with academic results than here. So if you are worse off socioeconomically here, you are more likely to do comparatively well academically, which I thought was interesting. There's more equal outcomes here. But I think overall still the system produces more losers, if you will. But I thought that was an interesting point. But I think that's, again, like, there's a culture here for education is considered important. There's a lot of focus on education here. So swings and roundabouts, as they say. But my conclusion is it's not really that important. And then you go to university and you learn a bit more, and then you go get a job, and that's when you learn everything. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.